UC Davis football coach Tim Plow and Hall of Famer Patrick Willis. And now we begin the 9 o'clock hour every Wednesday. We like to check in with Kings television analyst, your friend and our friend, Kayte Christensen, joining us this morning. Kayte, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing well. Better than Dave. You know Dave well. He's got one of those migraine days, which I know those aren't fun to go through.
They are a nightmare. Yes, yeah. I can empathize.
Have you had those before?
Oh, yeah, I have chronic migraines.
Oh, man. So, like, as someone that never has, and not that I would wish it on anybody, like, Dave describes them. It's debilitating, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is debilitating, actually. It's funny. Obviously, we were just in Indiana for the Kings game, and I remember playing there when I was in the WNBA, and I actually missed a game in Indiana and was, like, in the locker room in the dark, like, had a terrible migraine that day. So, yeah, they are completely debilitating for sure.
I remember. I was a kid, Kayte, so I didn't have the knowledge, I guess, at the time and never experiencing them, which I'm thankful for and I guess blessed for. But I remember, I think it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar used to get them, and then there's been other people that had missed games. I'm like, how is he missing a game for a headache? And it's not, that's just not it. Like you're talking about light, like you just can't even, like lights or different sound, like you just can't function, right?
Yeah, it's definitely lights and noises. And your head, it feels like it's splitting open. Ugh. Like, and it's usually like always on one side. So like mine is always on the right side, above my right eye. And it's just, yeah. And I mean, it can be so bad that it makes you throw up, like from how much pain, like you get nauseous. And yeah, so they can be a little, they have great medicine for them now. Yeah. So that does help. So,
you guys are now back from an extended trip. Of all the years you have done this now, you guys like took residency in Miami. I can't remember. What was it? 4 full nights in Miami?
Oh,
3?
gosh.
3 or 4?
Yeah, 3.
Well, I was after Houston, and you stayed after the game,
4,
right?
Because, we went after the Houston game. Yeah, there was one other time that it was actually in Miami as well, and I want to say it was maybe within the last 5 years where we had like 2 full days off in Miami, and I think some people might enjoy that. I'm not particularly on that list of people, but it's just how the schedule works out. I guess there's worse places to be for a few days, but
yeah. If you had a preference of your NBA cities and the team said, hey, we're going to be here for, I guess what was equivalent to 4 nights, what would be the top of your list?
I would probably, just for selfish reasons, say LA. It would never happen because of how close we are. But then maybe in that sense, I could get my family down there and maybe do a little Disney or Universal, you know?
Yeah, make a trip out of it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, look, Kayte, we're now about a quarter of the way into the season. I think we always learn something about this team as we go along. And they had some good moments on this trip. It's really tough for them to put together, to me, 4 good quarters of basketball. There were stretches in the Indiana game where they were great, and then the last 6 minutes they kind of let themselves down. What's keeping them from being closer to that 4-quarter team right now?
Yeah, well, you're 100% right. I feel like it's been the first quarter in a lot of games where they get themselves in trouble. And there's kind of a good thing and a bad thing about that, right? They got down by 11 in the first quarter. I think the second quarter, they were like a -3. They had a brilliant third quarter. And then it's just, especially being on the road, but when you get down double digits in the first quarter, you're battling and scratching and clawing the rest of the way through. And so it basically puts you in a situation where you have to play near flawless basketball the rest of the way through. And so, they had a brilliant third quarter. They didn't turn the ball over. They didn't foul like they fouled in that first quarter. I think Indiana had like 13 free throw attempts in that first quarter alone, but in the second half, I think they only had like 4 or 6 free throw attempts before the game kind of got out of control. The last 4 minutes, and then there was those really ridiculous fouls in the last like 60 seconds of the game where I don't even know what the officials were doing. I think Mark made a comment about I guess they don't have a plane to catch.
All right.
Because it didn't make a lot of sense. But, I think that was the problem against Indiana, was just early fouling and got themselves in trouble in the first quarter. And then they played great really the rest of the way through. But if you have letdowns the last 4 minutes, they're incredibly costly because you put yourself in a situation where you cannot make mistakes. And listen, you can't play that way. No, everyone's going to make mistakes. So I think that was kind of the issue, and something that I have seen kind of early in this season is first quarters can be really, really tough on this team. So it's how they come out, how they approach it in the beginning. That, I think is something that they can and should address.
Talking with Kayte Christensen, Kings television analyst. On this trip, we saw one of those games that Zach LaVine is definitely capable of. I mean, he scored the first 10 against Miami, 18 in the quarter. Was just hot all night long, looked comfortable, showed off his athletic ability. I know he can't go for 42 every night, but he showed us early on that he could be, an elite scorer, an efficient scorer. What is it that they're not getting that from him? Again, I'm not expecting 42 every night, but Kayte, there's some nights where then he goes and takes 3 shots or 8 shots. Like they just can't find all that they can get out of Zach LaVine right now.
It's an interesting question because it's obviously, I think, one that, everyone kind of is wondering and I think unfairly there's been some blame put on Zach LaVine as if like, oh, he just disappears or he didn't show up or that kind of narrative. But, and I said it several times, pardon me, through the course of the Indiana game, he's coming off 42, shooting the ball incredibly well. You want to try and really get him going early. And I just feel like there's stretches where this team doesn't have the mentality of we need to make sure that this guy is getting touches right now, right? And it's kind of a conundrum because you want to play where the ball, multiple people are getting touches and the ball's moving and people are moving, body and ball movement, right? We talk about that all the time. But I think there needs to be a little bit more of a deliberate focus on making sure that he's getting the touches. And in the NBA, you can't be a coach that is on the sideline calling play after play after play after play. Rick Carlisle, obviously the head coach of Indiana, used to kind of have that MO, right? When he was in Dallas, and it was like, he's calling all the plays from the sideline. The players, in my opinion, need to have some power in this situation where they could go out, make reads. And Doug Christie has talked a lot about he doesn't want to teach his team to run plays. He wants to teach them how to play the game. And that's part of playing the game, is just the recognition of making sure that, certain people are getting touches. And that, okay, if someone's kind of on a streak, you want to make sure that you're focusing in on making sure that they're in good positions to score. So that's the 5 guys that are on the floor that need to be cognizant and aware of that. And I just feel like there's long stretches of where Zach's not even getting touches on the offensive end. And I think that sometimes that can breed the mentality in a player where when they do get a touch, they force up a shot that maybe isn't the best shot. And I didn't see that from Zach in Indiana. I actually thought there was a couple that he I felt could have taken, but he did pass it to a teammate and they did get a great shot, right? But this is a guy that can score at a high level. And so there's times too where, he's trying to play the right way, he's trying to make the right pass. And I think that's a great mentality to have. I would just like to see the team focus a little bit more on making sure that they're putting him in a position where he's getting a touch, a quality touch during the course of their offense. Run it through, like make sure that multiple people are touching it, not just Zach, because you're just going to get a better shot that way. And I just feel like there's a lot of possessions where or too many possessions where 1 or 2 guys are touching the ball, and when they're touching it, they're dribbling 10, 15 times and then going into kind of an ISO move to get a shot. I think they're, NBA players are high-level players, right? And yes, there are guys that can do that, and there's probably a lot of guys that can do that. I just don't think that's the best brand of basketball.
Yeah, and
for longevity.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that, Kayte. Is that more on, it's probably collective, I know, but like on Russ or on Schroeder or whoever's playing point guard to kind of recognize that, or is that still a collective there?
It's a collective. It's got to be also a message coming from the coaches. But, yeah, I think that really is a primary responsibility of a point guard. But obviously, you can run a play. The point starts the offensive possession, but then it falls on the other four guys as well, right? Everyone on the court has to be on the same page. Like if Russ passes it to, DeMar, DeMar also has to be like, you know what, we need to get Zach a touch, or we need to get, so-and-so. It's Malik a touch, who's just made, 5 straight baskets. Like those things are kind of threads throughout a game where everybody needs to be aware of it, but also the point guard saying, hey, we need to make sure that we're getting some good looks for so-and-so right now. Those need to be conversations that are being had on the floor amongst the players.
As we're talking with Kayte Christensen here, the team is missing Domantas Sabonis, but as a result of that, we've seen an influx of minutes here for Maxime Reynaud, and now starting the last couple of games, really starting to produce some good things for Doug Christie. What have you seen watching Max develop here kind of right in front of our eyes?
Yeah, this is the silver lining, right? And you never listen, I understand fans don't want silver linings, but I'm looking at it through kind of the lenses of, this is kind of a gift. Like, I don't think anyone expected Max to get big minutes this season because he is backing up Domas, and you do kind of want Domas to be playing 35 minutes, so that doesn't leave a lot for a backup. But this extended time, I've been incredibly, impressed by Max for multiple reasons. He's got a lot of things in his offensive tool belt, if you will, that I didn't really realize that he had. And a lot of young bigs, especially, might have one move and a counter to the move. He's got a bunch of different moves. He's got great touch around the basket. He has a great feel for the offense and for kind of the defense and what shot is available. He's done a good job on the boards in my mind. But I think maybe the thing I'm most impressed with is his versatility on defense. He communicates at a high level, which I think is a rarity for a rookie, let alone a big, because the big is kind of, sitting back in the back of that defense, and they need to be the ones that are, kind of controlling the communication and then, calling things out and making sure that, the guys out in front of him know what's going on behind. He does that really well. But they've been switching 1 through 5 with him on the floor. And he's done a tremendous job in terms of keeping his space, staying in front of offensive players, and then being able to contest or, force them to move the ball along. And so that, to me, probably has been the most surprising thing to me from his game. And you can just tell that his confidence is really going up, and that his IQ he's got a high basketball IQ. He's a smart player.
Now that you've seen him play a little bit more while Sabonis is out, when Domantas comes back, I'm sure those minutes go right back to him, as they should. But is there a scenario, Kayte, where you can see them playing together at all? Will they work together? Yeah,
I do think that there is a scenario, and I think Doug was actually asked that question in Indiana. There was a French journalist there that was asking, questions, and he asked that question. And listen, Doug kind of summed it up maybe best. Like, you can't really script what you're going to do. Like, you go into a season, you've got a new roster, you've got ideas of what could work together. That might not have been a theory that he had at the beginning of this season that, down the line, we're going to be able to play these two side by side. But I think with what Max has shown, I think that's opening that conversation within the coaching staff of saying this is a possibility, because he has the ability to stretch the floor. He's really versatile on defense, as we were just talking about. And when you look at the trend of where the NBA is going with kind of bigger rosters, bigger lineups, right, where you got a couple 7-foot guys out there. We've seen it with Utah. You've got it with Houston. I mean, you can go down the list. A lot of most NBA teams now have size. And the small ball theory, to me, is kind of trending down in the NBA right now. And I think the reason that it is because when it went to small ball, it had a lot to do with the spreading of the floor and the three-point shooting just skyrocketing in the league, right? Well, at that time, a lot of bigs weren't three-point shooters, and that was kind of when Brooke Lopez, for example, started to integrate that skill set into his game, and that changed how he could play and who he could play with. But now that you have 7-footers that for years now have been practicing their three, it's been a part of the game, I think that's where you can start to play 2 7-footers together, and why we're seeing that. Because odds are that one, if not both of them, do have that ability to stretch the floor. And so I think that's where you might have the possibility of seeing those two play together.
Kayte, you mentioned Doug. You've known him a long time. I've known him a long time. I personally was worried a little bit about him just at the very beginning, just his own competitive spirit, how some of the things he was saying after post games, which I'm sure he was saying to the team, but sharing with the media. And I thought, boy, Doug, you got a long season ahead of him. I feel like there's been a little bit of a tone shift for him. Not that, I know he's competitive. He doesn't want to lose any of these games. Have you noticed that too? I mean, you're in a lot of these things on the road. I just thought, man, is Doug going to be able to make it himself personally through this year? Have you noticed that kind of, I don't know, he's not content with losing. That's not what I mean by any means, but he's not, wearing it as much as I felt like he was the first 10 games or so.
Yeah, I think it's a learning curve, right? I think it affects him greatly because he is competitive, and competitive people, no matter what business you're in, I feel like it kind of you take it as a personal blow, right? And how many blows can you take before it just, you fall apart because that competitive nature is just so ingrained in you. I think part of it is just Doug recognizing that there's a lot of things outside of his control, right? Mm-hmm. And so as a coach, you want to have your competitive spirit kind of impact your team and drive your team. But you also have to be able to say, listen, there's, a number of things outside my control. All I can do now is try to control the things that are within my power. And that's how how they're prepared for games, the message you're portraying to them. It's, you can go down the list of all the things that he can control. So I think that maybe that's where the tone shift is coming from, is just saying, listen, I'm not playing with a full deck of cards right now. It's been shuffled multiple times. And, I've got to continue to try and push this team to grow and continue to put that competitive stamp on in terms of the expectations. We may not be playing with everybody, but there are expectations that I kind of demand of this team and the players, because what they're trying to do, they really are trying to, it's a cultural shift, right? And we've tried this multiple times with multiple coaches and different iterations. And so I think when you look at it from that perspective, the narrative shift, or kind of what he's portraying, is kind of accepting, I can't control this. So what can I do? What does my team need me to be right now for them?
Do you get any kind of read from the players about their own, how do I put it, their own future? Because there's a lot of talk, that, December 15th is a date of significance. The trade deadline's a couple months after that. That's a date of significance, where there's guys in rumors, and there's no certainty in this league for anybody. But do you get a sense that those guys are going out there not knowing how much longer they have with this team?
So I have no conversations with players about anything involving that kind of topic, right? And I don't know if other members of the media do that. That's to each their own. I personally think that, as a former player, that's crossing a boundary for me, right? Yeah. I wouldn't want, our TV person to come up and be like, hey, are you worried about, what's your investment level? So I think the only kind of perspective I can offer on that is what it must feel like to be in those shoes, right? Because they're playing in an era where, and I didn't play in this era where there was social media and kind of a 24/7 news cycle on social, and it's very narrative driven, and people's opinions are out there, and then they get pushed even further, and all of this nonsense comes back to the players. And listen, it's part of the business. It's a business you signed up for. You're aware of it. I can't imagine as a player dealing with that because I never had to. But what I can say is that with pretty good certainty that I'm sure it does affect them, because it's like your name's mentioned in trade rumors during the summer. It's mentioned during trade rumors during the season. You can look at things like, well, the overall picture. Certainly the Kings are trying to kind of rebuild and rebrand, if you will, and they're trying to build something. And, you know, you can look at your salary or what's left on your contract, and you can say logistically and with your agent and just knowledge of kind of how the business works, I'm probably not a piece of this future that they're trying to build. So I've got to imagine that the 15th of December, and then then it's January 15th. Right. And then like all these milestones, these markers throughout the season, I think everyone has a pretty fair kind of assessment of where they are in terms of the longevity and future with this team. So because of all of those things we just mentioned, the social media and the news cycle and all the stuff. So I can't imagine that it is an easy kind of space to be, in. But then what everyone is going to say, because it always comes back to that, is it's part of the business and you make millions of dollars. That's great. They're still human beings. Exactly. I can't imagine that it's an easy thing from a human perspective.
Not at all. Also not easy when you've had a pretty difficult schedule already and you get added these two games during this Cup week to have Denver come in. I mean, it's really probably about two of the worst they could have been added, but at least you're well prepared. You know a lot about Denver. What do you expect for Joker and Murray and the Nuggets coming in tomorrow?
The same thing we've seen from them in the three previous matchups already we've had this season. To my knowledge, Aaron Gordon's out for a bit, so they'll, be without him. And I actually think that went well. That played into the favor of the Kings in that third matchup in Denver. But yeah, I mean, you expect with this team, it's going to be a difficult matchup with Joker. You've got Jamal Murray, who is, I think, we talked about it with Bam Adebayo during the Indiana game as well. Those are two names to me that pop up that I think they're stars in this league that maybe are a little underrated and a little under the radar, if you will. Which is fine. It is what it is. Their numbers speak for it, and their value to their team speaks for itself. So, the theory or the approach that the Kings took to the last game against Denver in the previous matchups was, we're not going to double team Joker. We're not going to send people because he's a phenomenal passer. So that's going to be a one-on-one matchup with the big. He might get 40, but we're trying to make it so, he's not getting those easy cutting, dive dunks to the rim or the skip out threes to like Jamal and other 3-point shooters. So I imagine that they're probably going to use a little bit of the same game plan, but you always have to have a plan B and a plan C. You can't feed them a steady diet of anything throughout the course of the game. So, it's going to be the same thing as the previous three matchups. I know it's a boring thing to say, but that's why this Denver team is as good as they are and why they've gotten as far as they have, because they don't change things up. They are who they are. It's just you have to try and figure out different ways that you can gain advantages throughout the course of 48 minutes against them. So, I'm super pleased that it's Denver and Minnesota. I was like, oh my gosh, this is
rinse and repeat.
The brutality of the schedule is no joke.
Yeah. Well, Denver's 17-6 for a reason. It's worked for them, but one of those losses came to the Kings, so we'll see.
Right.
We'll see how that goes. Kayte, thank you as always. We love our conversations on Wednesdays, and we will see you tomorrow night at the arena.
All right. Take care, Jason.
All right. Thank you. That is Kayte Christensen joining us, giving us her perspective on this team, where they are now, and what they're going to try to do going forward. And that next challenge is tomorrow night against Denver. Break time for us. What's on Deck, brought to you by Trex Decking and Railing. And still to come, Crosstalk with Alan Stiles, plus Celebrity Birthdays, brought to you by Crumble Cookies, all straight ahead.
The San Francisco 49ers play on Sactown Sports 1140.